Now, Miss Turner, you said Mrs. Hammond had never flown as long as you had known her. For how long did you know her?
Ages.
Well, how long is that?
I don't know exactly.
About 6 months?
No.
A year?
More like 2.
2 years?
Yes.
At that time, you became her best friend.
Yes.
All the same, you could have no knowledge of Mrs. Hammond's flying habits prior to that time.
Only what she told me. She said she hated flying and would never go in a plane again.
You imply that there's something sinister in the fact that she changed her mind?
No, I'm just saying it's odd, that's all.
Why odd? I mean, if Mrs. Hammond was afraid of losing Mr. Simon, what more natural than that she should keep an eye on him, even if it meant going up in an aeroplane?
Well, there's your explanation, then.
And what's yours, Miss Turner?
What about?
Well, who told Mrs. Hammond of the existence of a rival?
What?
Well, someone presumably told Mrs. Hammond about this young lady Mr. Simon was presumably keeping in a flat in Knightsbridge.
Yes.
Well, who was it? Come now, it was you, wasn't it, Miss Turner?
Look, I don't see what this has got to do with anything.
Please answer the question, Miss Turner.
Well, I thought that April ought to know.
Yes, what was your motive?
Oh, friendship.
Friendship?
Look, I was April's best friend.
And how did you find out about the young lady in Knightsbridge?
I just heard.
From whom?
Oh, I don't know.
Miss Turner, someone must have told you.
Suppose
I mean,
so.
it didn't come to you in a dream.
No.
Well, who was it? Was it the plaintiff, Mr. Cummings?
No.
I suggest to you it was, Miss Turner. I suggest that your whole evidence is a tissue of lies designed to protect Mr. Cummings.
No, it's not.
What is your relationship with Mr. Cummings?
We're just friends.
Good friends? You seem to have a remarkable talent for friendship, Miss Turner. My lord, I see no point in continuing this cross-examination. The witness is obviously lying.
I'm not. I've told the truth.
Well, Lord, unlike my learned friend, I see nothing sinister in a relationship between this witness and the plaintiff. Indeed, I submit that my learned friend is merely trying to discredit the witness.
Yes, but the time for speeches is later, Mr. Ingrams.
Yes, my lord. Miss Turner, are you Mr. Cummings' mistress?
No.
Have you ever been his mistress?
No.
You are, as you told the court, merely a friend of Mr. Cummings.
Yes.
How long have you known Mr. Cummings?
Oh, about 2 years now.
And you've met him socially?
Yes, lots of times.
Now, in the 2 years that you've known Mr. Cummings, have you ever witnessed him have a fit or turn or attack of any kind?
No.
Now, have you ever witnessed an epileptic attack?
Oh, yes. Yes, when I was at school, the girl
But
there,
you have
she
never
often had
seen Mr.
fits.
Cummings suffer a similar attack?
No.
No. Now, you were Mrs. Hammond's confidant, weren't you?
Yes.
And you described her marriage as a sick joke.
That's right.
Why?
Oh, because it was dead, finished.
Mrs. Hammond told you this?
Yes. Oh, yes. You see, she was married when she was 18. As far as she was concerned, it had all been over for years. She always used to call him the dope. And I'll tell you something else. He used to beat her up. April often told me that the...
I have no further questions for Miss Turner, my lord.
Thank you. You may leave the witness box, Miss Turner.
That concludes the case for the plaintiff, my lord.
Yes.
My lord, the first witness for the defence is the defendant herself, Mrs. Erica Simon. Your name is Erica Hannah Simon,
Yes,
and you are the widow of Louis Simon.
yes,
And you live at Les Hurtres, Montorgueil, Jersey.
I do.
Now, Mrs. Simon, are you a shareholder in Icarus Properties, Mr. Cummings' company?
Yes, much good it does me too, with him running things.
And did you distribute this broadsheet at an extraordinary general meeting of that company at the Crown Imperial Hotel in June 4th, 1973?
I had to do something. People should know about this.
And it's your contention, is it not, that the matter printed in this broadsheet is true?
Look, I wanted everyone to know the sort of man Edward Cummings is. He's a crook, and he killed my husband.
Mrs. Simon, I realise you feel very strongly about Mr. Cummings, but you must try to keep calm whilst you are giving your evidence.
My lord, I'm sorry. But true is true.
Yes. Now, Mrs. Cummings, Mrs. Simon, I'm sorry. How long have you known Mr. Cummings?
About 5 years.
Did you see
He was a business acquaintance of Louis, a friend. Such a friend.
Did you see him frequently?
Oh, all the time. Well, a lot of the time. He stayed with us in Jersey a few times and in Paris, and on our yacht. He was a friend. So I thought.
Now, on any of these occasions, did you observe Mr. Cummings at any time exhibit any unusual symptoms?
You mean have turns?
Yes.
I saw them.
Now, could you describe them to the jury, please?
Well, he used to go sort of pale and rigid and look away from you, if you follow what I mean. It was as if he wasn't there or you weren't. It didn't last for more than a few seconds. The first time I saw it, well, it looked like he was thinking something, you know the way you do. But when I asked him once if he was all right, he said it was nothing, a touch of indigestion, got all embarrassed. But I knew it wasn't indigestion.
Did you ever suggest that Mr. Cummings should see a doctor?
Of course I did. I worried about him. I worry about everybody. Louis used to say it was a pity we didn't have children. Then I could use up all my worry on my family instead of wasting it on his friends.
Yes, Mrs. Simon. But what was Mr. Cummings' reaction when you suggested he should see a doctor?
He said it was nothing. He said he didn't like doctors. He said a man in his position couldn't afford to give the impression there was anything wrong with him. I said, what about Louis's piles? Everyone knows Louis always travels round with an air cushion. It never did Louis any harm in business.
Yes, indeed, Mrs. Simon. Mr. Cummings was worried about the effect the news of his seizures would have on business.
That's what he said.
She's lying.
So how can I lie? I just took an oath not to.
Mr. Cummings.
Oh, I'm sorry, my lord.
Now, Mrs. Simons, Mr. Cummings bought out your husband's share in Icarus Properties, did he not?
Yes.
But you retained some of your shares.
A few Louis gave me. I should have sold.
Now, why did your husband sell out his shares to Mr. Cummings?
Because he offered him a lot of money. But also because they had arguments.
Arguments?
Mr. Cummings was always jealous of Louis. Louis was more successful in business. Louis pulled off the big deals. Mr. Cummings wanted to be a Louis Simon.
How do you know that, Mrs. Simon?
Because he told me.
Mr. Cummings said he wanted to be another Louis Simon.
He said to me, Erica, he said, you just watch me now I'm on my own. I'll make Louis Simon look like small fry, he said. You'll be glad you've got those shares, he said.
Now, what happened to Icarus Properties when Mr. Cummings took over?
He tried to be a big property developer without enough capital.
And, of course, eventually he had to come to your husband to ask for capital.
Where else could he go? But he phoned me first.
And Mr. Cummings telephoned you?
Yes,
For what purpose?
to sweeten me up, you know, to see how I thought Louis would react.
When was this telephone call?
About a month before he killed Louis. He phoned me in Jersey. He says to me, Erica, put in a good word for me.
Did you?
I rang Louis in London. I told him.
And what was your husband's reaction?
Reaction? He laughed. Trouble I don't need, he said. That kind of trouble I don't have to buy. I knew he'd never lend Ted Cummings a penny piece.
Yes, but your husband did go up in Mr. Cummings' aeroplane to look at the property.
Why not? Always be ready to talk business, Louis used to say. Even if you're not interested, maybe you'll learn something. That was the last time I ever spoke to him.
Yes. Thank you, Mrs. Simon.
Are you all right? Mrs. Simon, would you like me to adjourn the court for a few moments until you recover?
No, my lord. I'm all right.
Very well. Mr. Ingram.
Mrs. Simon, what were your relations with your husband?
I was married to him.
Yes, I know, Mrs. Simon, but were you fond of him?
I was married to him for 23 years. Does that tell you anything?
Yes, Mrs. Simon, it tells me you were married for a long time. It doesn't tell me whether it was a happy marriage or not.
We were very happy. Ask anyone.
How often were you with your husband in the last 6 months of his life?
How often? I didn't keep a diary.
Or did you and your husband spend months or weeks together in those last 6 months?
You must understand, Louis was away a lot of the
Mrs.
time
Simon,
on business.
is it not a fact that in the last 6 months of his life you and your husband were sharing the same roof for less than 3 weeks?
Maybe. I can't remember.
Mrs. Simon, in the last 2 years of his life, you and your husband were to all intents and purposes separated, weren't you?
There was no separation.
But you didn't live together or even see each other very often, did you?
All marriages have their bad patches.
Mrs. Simon, in 1969 you started divorce proceedings.
Well, yes, but I...
Why?
My lord, I protest Mrs. Simon's marriage is hardly the concern of this court.
Yes, but this all links up, does it not, with the plaintiff's evidence as to what he told Mrs. Simon when she came to see him in the hospital. I think Mr. Ingrams can ask these questions. Mr. Ingrams?
I'm obliged, my lord. Mrs. Simon, I asked you why you started divorce proceedings.
Well, like I said, even the best marriages go through bad patches.
1969 to 1973 is rather a long bad patch, I should have thought.
That's all you know about marriage?
Now, when you started divorce proceedings, what were the grounds? Mrs. Simon, there was another woman, wasn't there?
It didn't mean anything. That's why I didn't go through with the divorce.
Yet the bad patch, by your own admission, continued. In fact, it wasn't just one woman, was it? Your husband had a whole string of women, didn't he?
We had no children. After 20 years, it isn't easy to keep a man's interest. I was always plump. He used to like that. I was 18 when I married him. 18? What did I know about anything? But if he'd lived, it would have come all right. It was just a phase with Louis.
4 years is rather more than a phase, Mrs. Simon.
Not if you have a whole lifetime. But we didn't, thanks to Edward Cummings.
Now, that's not the only thing you blame Mr. Cummings for, is it?
I don't know what you mean.
You blamed Mr. Cummings, did you not, for the wreckage of your marriage?
Wreckage? What wreckage? 20 years of marriage and you call it a wreck? How long have you been married?
My marriage is not relevant to these proceedings.
Mrs. Simon, you are here to answer questions, not to ask them.
I put it to you, Mrs. Simon, that your obvious bitterness against my client derives not solely from the events of the crash.
You think I wanted Louis killed?
I think you blame Mr. Cummings for far more than crashing an aeroplane, Mrs. Simon. I think you blame Mr. Cummings because you believe that he supplied your husband with women. I think you're a jealous, angry woman, determined to do as much damage as you can.
Louis loved me. He loved me. You're just making up these stories to make him look better. 20 years we were married, 20 years. Do you think all his little trollops could change that?
The case of Cummings versus Simon will be resumed tomorrow in the Crown Court.